Welcome back to the Drop Bass Not Bombs podcast. My name is Amy Farina, MC Unicorn, and I'm joined today by DJ Vander. How's it going?
It's going great. Nice to be here, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning out in LA. It's nighttime in Amsterdam. Always crazy with the time difference, but yeah, I appreciate you
Totally.
joining us today. Can we start off first a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what it is that you do?
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, East Coaster. And I have sort of a hybrid of backgrounds. I have a background in music, obviously. I'm a composer, a piano player, and I had a traditional music background. But I also have a background in finance and in political science. So growing up, I was always focused on my business and real estate. I learned a lot about that in school and finance, but I was always big into my music. And I started actually originally as just doing basic beat production, like down tempo and hip hop. And it sort of developed over many years into a bigger brand that was more electronica based, where I was doing a whole range of EDM, down tempo, progressive house, even some trance and drum and bass. And over the years, my brand developed into more of like a hybrid of music producer, DJ, and entrepreneur investor. And now, over the last 4 years, I have a digital media agency where I do social media, marketing, press, and helping lots of different entrepreneurs. So I've kind of become this digital media slash music producer mogul. So it's kind of been a journey and a development to where it is today.
That's amazing. And there's so much intersectionality between all those things. So it's really cool that you've been able to put it all together into this career. Do you have an earliest electronic music memory? Do you have a moment where you heard it for the first time at a rave or on the radio, which made you fall in love with the music?
For sure. I mean, my earliest love of electronic music production was probably Moby. I've been a fan of Moby for a long time. I had the opportunity to meet him actually many years ago at a music conference where I got to tell him, what an inspiration he'd been for me over the years. And that was really special to me. I really love, big fan of film and cinema. And one of my favorite movies that incorporates Moby's music is the film Heat by Michael Mann. Moby has the music throughout it, but he mainly God Moving Over the Face of the Waters is his track at the end of the end titles, the famous scene with De Niro and Pacino when Pacino kills De Niro and he's passing, and there's this like epic version of that song that's produced by Moby. And I found myself really loving the fact that he was able to incorporate the piano, which I love so much and is my roots of instrument, into this sort of like beautiful hybrid of synths and strings and orchestral production. And that was one of the earliest sounds that really inspired me to want to be like, okay, I want to do more than just be a piano composer. I could actually take my piano and create fuller crafted tracks with them. So I would say Moby was one of the first. But then also, other even drum and bass artists that incorporated piano and strings like Goldie. I loved all of those original electronica tracks, Prodigy, Fat of the Land, all that stuff that was sort of on the cutting edge at the time that incorporated down-tempo production, but then also keys. I love that.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. I've actually never seen that movie before, Heat, so maybe I should watch it this
Oh,
weekend.
you got to watch it. Yeah, Michael Mann is one of my favorite directors, and Heat is, I love, and if you actually look at what I'm doing, you'll see a lot of my content is actually a lot of odes to Michael Mann, and I create my own style and riff where he was a master of, he really incorporated Los Angeles and using like beautiful industrial shots of LA combined with a lot of the music of like Moby and other atmospheric productions. So it's definitely, I would definitely recommend checking out Heat. It's for sure a great flick.
Cool. And that's interesting what you're saying about this cinematographic music, because in electronic music, you kind of have different styles, right? You have some that's very cinematic, some that really tells a story. And then you have other subgenres of electronic music where it's kind of just straight bass or a straight kick. So that's really
Yeah,
interesting. I've had a lot of guests on this podcast, and most people, the way they get into electronic music is they heard it on the radio, or, in the 90s, like they got into it through Eurodance or
of
something like
course.
that. So from a movie's really interesting perspective. And I think it says a lot about your music today as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I also would add that like part of my inspiration was I have to always give a shout out to my mentor. When I moved out to Los Angeles during high school, I had a jazz music teacher, and he's a dear, dear friend to me to this day. His name is Emanuele Arnone, and he actually is was a very, very accomplished composer who worked with Hans Zimmer, and he was like on many Hans Zimmer projects. And I ended up when I came back to Los Angeles after moving back to New York to pursue my music more after I'd started my real estate investment business. I worked for him and worked on film. And I always found that like film to me and the incorporation of both symphonic as well as electronic music into film has always been the roots of my production. I actually got into making electronic music not even to be a DJ. It was to actually score film. And it wasn't only until later when somebody told me, dude, you have all these really cool beats and a lot of them are dance beats. Like, why aren't you a DJ? And I was like, a DJ? Why would I DJ? And he said, nah, but dude, like you're a producer. You make all these beats. Like you got to perform them out. Like that's what it is now. And that's when I actually started studying DJing on YouTube and like literally just reinvented myself as a DJ. But I want like a lot of people get into electronic music from the DJ. Like, oh, I saw this DJ at this club, or I love Calvin Harris, or I love Cascade, or these different people. And that made them want to become a producer. So for me, it's interesting that it's like quite the opposite.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also what you
Yeah.
said at the top of the interview as well, going from political science and finance. I actually studied political science and international law. So it's funny how
Oh,
everybody
awesome.
ends up, yeah, and then now I'm doing this, but it's funny how we all end up here. But taking your story kind of step by step, how did you go about deciding like, this is what I want to do? I want to be a digital media mogul.
Well, that happened much, much later. What happened was I had success in finance because, I had one of these interesting sort of backgrounds where I had a mother who thought that business wasn't so important and all I needed to do was pursue my music because I was so talented in music. And I had a father who said, yeah, the music thing is great and everything, but I want you to focus on your finance and on your craft. So I had two of these type of parents in my ear, which kind of pushed me to be this hybrid. And then, the political science element, I always tell people, I think that's why I have so much success in finance is because I think about things from a global geoeconomic standpoint. And I think that allowed me to understand not only how to make my own businesses, but how to monetize my music craft and my brand in that way. So the branding and the pivot into digital media marketing actually was like one of the latest and last things I did in my career. I knew nothing about marketing. I had absolutely no background in it. Nothing at all. I simply knew that, basically what happened was like I started meeting certain people and I started investing in myself using my other businesses to blow my brand up, doing digital ads, putting my stuff out on Facebook and everything. And I started realizing like, wow, like this is really kind of like overpriced and this is like, cool and it's helping me. But gosh, feel like I'm spending so much money and I don't really understand why all this has cost so much. So I guess the innovator mind of myself, I wanted to like figure out like what things would really cost. And that's when I started reaching out to the sources and I started figuring out that a lot of marketing is not only fluff, but it's grossly overpriced. And what I wanted to do was like, look, let me create a business where I give my clients the best result in their digital media marketing. I can make a small profit, but I don't need to gouge each individual client. And I focus on scaling and having lots of clients that are very happy and always come back. And that was sort of how I built my model because I already had, I think it was, a lot of people start businesses because they really need to make it somehow. They need money. And I think I was blessed in the sense that like I came from the standpoint of media being like, I don't even need money anymore. I'm very successful with my other stuff, but I would just love to make a little extra money to pay for my music. So I don't feel like come out of my own pocket. Like the whole reason I created this was simply to fund my own brand. And then I was like, wait a second, this is actually a business and people are coming back and wanting to work and I'm able to offer great services at a much lower price than the average, public relations company, especially here in Los Angeles. So that was sort of like the roots of what got me doing it.
Wow. So how do you go about finding clients and people to work with now? How have you built the network that you have?
I actually am very like, everything to this day is very word of mouth and very much just through my social media platforms, and through references. We don't have any staff. We don't have any overhead costs. It's just me and my partner. and we do basically everything on our own. I mean, we a la carte hire, contractors for specific things, for press or for Instagram management. But, really, I've built this business from simply having one-on-one phone conversations with people and being like, look, trust me with your budget. How much can you afford each month to invest in yourself? What have you been paying this person? Okay, give me a chance to do it for 3 months and I'll charge this much less. And if you're not happy, then move on. There's no commitment. And people just keep wanting to work. And even if they can't anymore, they're like so apologetic. Like, I'm so sorry, I'm dealing with this. I have this personal situation I'm dealing with, but I'm going to come back maybe in 5 months and I want to like get back and start doing the marketing again. So we've been really lucky that we get a lot of retention. We have like almost 100% retention rate. And even when, the client doesn't continue, they're always contacting us every month and they're always trying to continue to work.
Are most of your clients in the music industry, or is it across all industries?
It's a great question. I originally did start this as a music marketing firm, but now we're diversified in lots of different backgrounds, from coaching to podcasts. We have a whole entire podcast rollout development team. We help nonprofits. We even have physicians and doctors that we help with their surveys, their Google stuff online, their analytics. So we've really become a 360 firm. And I'm really excited about that because, it's even though I'm really, really, really good at the music marketing sometimes is harder because, unfortunately, we just know that the state of where artists are at, they usually don't have the money or the understanding to invest. And another thing is that musicians can sometimes be their own worst enemy. I say this all the time because there's a sort of like cultural entitlement that's really started with a lot of musicians where they're like, my music's great. I do these parties at my college, or I do these hangout sessions and everybody loves my stuff. And like, it's just going to go viral. I just need to like put this out. And what I try to tell people is that like, the truth is that the social media platforms now are actually really working to block virality in posting and in content. So people need to understand that like, no matter how great your stuff is, like you really do need to be investing in it. And I always tell people, like, instead of spending those thousands of dollars on a music video or on all these fancy photo shoots and renting all these cars, literally, if you just had a simple $500 video, and one song, and you just put a couple thousand every month, into the marketing of it, that will take you so much further than spending all this money on all this stuff that no one's going to see anyway. So I'm constantly seeing that, and it's frustrating. I see these friends of mine, even on Facebook, they put out these beautifully polished music videos, and then I'd be like, hey, I can help you with marketing. I have a YouTube team, and we're really good at getting numbers up. And they're like, nah, I'm sorry, I really can't do any money right now for marketing. It's like, yeah, but you had all this money for the music video. So it can be frustrating. And I try to get that message out to people that they really need to understand the way the landscape in terms of actually building a brand has changed.
Yeah, and I think it continues to change, right? As we see with more short form content now, like TikTok or Instagram Reels. I've found it difficult myself to like stay on top of trends and things like that. How do you advise people then with the constantly changing landscape? I suppose that in 5 years it's going to be different than it is now.
Yeah, you have to evolve. I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. I'm sure you've seen Gary Vee stuff
Mm-hmm.
and follow him. He pays attention to the trend, and I also focus on things that are like, I don't always worry about what's the exact new social media platform that's like blowing up. And I think more in terms of like my focus, like in my skill set is your stuff cool, relatable, and addicting? Like, that's it. Because at the end of the day, if you bring something to the table that people want to keep checking on, it doesn't really matter which platform is relevant. They're going to find you wherever it is, and they're going to people want to be inspired, especially right now, because I feel like we live in a time where there's so much monotony and there's such a oversaturation of people and art that's kind of got a lack of identity. So if you stand on your own and you have your own thing going on, I can't stress this enough how people will gravitate to it and find it. So I think people worry too much about the trends and should be worried more, focused on doing something that's actually really dope and just original. That's like, in a way, I think that's also kind of why, I don't have a problem with, like, so many people in LA are obsessed with being so young, and it's all about like what's new. And I'm like, yeah, that's important, but honestly, I'm a big believer that some of the best era of both music and film and cinema was more in the 90s and 2000s. And so what I try to do is like bring back the authenticism of that, and what was happening during that time, and apply it to the new styles of stuff. So it's like the new styles of shooting video, the new styles of making real content, all the things that are relevant today that get the clicks and the engagement that are important, but with the themes and with that sort of like, I would almost say like a spiritual connection to the art that I feel is more prevalent in some of the older styles. So that's what I try to do, is sort of bring the new and connect it with the old.
I think that's really smart. So I'm 33. I just turned 33. So I'm a 90s and 2000s girl. And like when you were saying
very
that,
young.
Yeah, thank you. When you were saying, about the 90s and 2000s being better, I'm just smiling, thinking, because I say that all the time. Like the movies were way better. Like I don't think comedies today are as funny. Like I still listen to mostly like 90s and early 2000s music. A lot of Eurodance, a lot of early trance, early techno, things like that, constantly. And then with movies too. Like, yeah, I just think it was a better time. So I appreciate you saying that. But also, I think that nostalgia is really popular right now because a lot of people like us do feel that way. And I am seeing now with the newer generation too, that like they're calling it vintage and things like that. Like we're not that old. But that they're into it, like they're into the 90s and 2000s, that you see them copying things from movies. And so I think what you're saying is smart. You take those new styles, the new style of shooting video, staying on top of new technology and things like that, but then coupled with nostalgia that everybody's craving for. I feel myself nostalgic a lot for, and the 2010s as well, like obviously 90s and early 2000s, but I feel with the 2010s, I've said this a lot on my podcast, that was kind of the golden age of like EDM as we know it today, especially with like Swedish House Mafia and Avicii and Alesso, with those guys. Like that was really a time. And I was in college during that time as well. So I think I'm nostalgic sometimes for those vibes, those moments. And I don't know, the simpler times of EDM too. Social media did kind of make things more complicated, I feel like.
Yeah, it made it more complicated. And it made it, one thing that's changing too is like, it became much more about the DJ as this sort of like actor figure, social media figure, as opposed to being the producer. And that's too bad. I mean, I think that's why, like, people like us who like really love the 2010 EDM scene. For me personally, I'm a big fan of like the melodic electronic music, that the progressive or drum bass that really was based on real composition and like the Marcus Schultz and all that kind of stuff, style. And I think what happened is you do still have some of that, but this sort of like neo wave of like the glitch electronica and it being all about the warping and like who could do the craziest warping and the most exotic granular synthesis. And I think it got a little bit out of control and it started becoming too much of like almost like a headbanging genre. And like like all these and I think Skrillex sort of started that and it kind of spiraled out from there. And so like I'm a big fan also of a believer of like not even worrying about like what necessarily is the new trending sound inside of electronica, and always making sure that like while my mix and my sonic composition is very, very tight and relevant, I'm also very into making sure that I incorporate what I feel are the important things that bring out an emotion reaction from the listener. And at the end of the day, that's melody, that's composition, and that's the beauty of what music has been doing since the days of Mozart, is having real arrangements and real compositions. And I think that that's something that's often lost in a lot of the new EDM.
So would you say now your favorite style to produce would be melodic house, or what would be the style that your favorite?
Yeah, I'm really into melodic house. A great question. I mean, I like melodic house, but I also like sort of like melodic progressive trap that also incorporates, I'm a singer as well. And so I incorporate my vocals into a lot of stuff. So this year people will be hearing a mix of like progressive house, my EDM, the stuff that people really know me for, my 4/4 dance floor stuff. But then also sometimes I drop things exclusively on SoundCloud. where I find that I get an incredible amount of engagement and real fans that check in. And there's some releases that I do that are like my mainstream Spotify releases where I'm focusing on charting and dropping stuff for iTunes. And that's sort of like can be sometimes my pop drum and bass or my pop EDM. But then I'm also really into doing just sort of like fun trap style stuff that I find exciting. That's got a hard element to it, but then very melodic, very smooth vocals with the smooth progressive pads and symphonic sound that I like as well. So I kind of bifurcate my sound, and I have like some stuff that I put out that's more mainstream, and then I have some stuff that's I kind of almost keep like underground, and I focus on sort of just guerrilla marketing as well to keep my name out there with the younger generation. I find that I have with that stuff that I do on SoundCloud, I've been getting a lot of love and response from like the new generation of like the 18 to 22-year-olds that hit me up all the time on SoundCloud. Like, whoa, this is hot, bro. Like, you sound like Yeet. You sound like you're doing, and it's like, it's nice. It's just cool to feel like, I'm still making stuff that people that the kids can connect to. And I think that people also need to understand that sometimes you got to put music in different places, like different platforms allow you to connect to different demographics. That's really something that I've learned too over the last couple of years.
So yeah, but you have to be across all platforms then, you have a different market on YouTube and on Spotify and SoundCloud, Mixcloud,
Totally, especially with the music platforms, because, the problem too is also engagement. Like I always tell this to my clients is like, because they always want to hit me up for Spotify playlists. And like, I want to get my stream. They're like, yeah, that's important. That's good. You should invest in your Spotify. But part of the problem with Spotify is like talking to a brick wall. It's really hard to, you don't get the engagement and response that you do from SoundCloud. What I like about SoundCloud is like, yeah, it doesn't monetize quite as well. And it's like, it's not really quite as respected in the industry in the same way that charting or getting a million streams does on Spotify. But I would rather, it's almost like it's like 100,000 real plays on SoundCloud is almost worth 1 million on Spotify, especially when that 100,000 plays comes with like 2,000-3,000 comments from new young people who are like, dude, I just followed you. When's the next tune coming out? You're my guy. This is crazy. Like, I'd never even heard of you before. To me, that feeling that I get from that I connected to somebody and that they really appreciate the song and it's in their playlist now, that means more to me than being like when my partner hits me and be like, bro, you're on this huge Spotify playlist. And it's like, okay, that's exciting. I'm very grateful, but it's like no one hits you up. There's not a lot of conversion. People go from SoundCloud to Instagram. They don't really go from Spotify to Instagram. That's an important thing for people to understand as well.
Yeah, and Spotify also doesn't allow the same community as SoundCloud has. Like SoundCloud, you could direct comment, you can just click repost, it shows up. I haven't used it in a while, to be honest, but from what I remember, that it was community based. I used to listen to a lot of remixes. Maybe I should go back to SoundCloud, but I used to listen to a lot of cool remixes and stuff. It's just a different kind of platform, and it definitely allows for more community. Whereas Spotify, like you can't interact with the artist at all. Yeah, you can add them to your library, but you can't really connect with them through there.
Yeah, and also, unfortunately, one thing I noticed too, and this is something that really made what separates my agency from others, is that we don't do any fake streams or anything. Everything that we do is from real relationship with curators, and it's real organic. Most of these streams that you see now from these artists that are on Spotify, now some of this has been cracked down, but a lot of it were fake streams that aren't based in anything. They were real, or they were bots that were replays from the same playlist. And so it's deceiving because artists almost started getting frustrated with seeing the numbers from certain artists, but then it's what you can tell. It's like, okay, it says, they've got like, some like millions of streams on every single track. And then you go to their Instagram and it's dead. There's like nothing there. So that's why if you actually go look at the SoundCloud, they may not have millions. Let's say they only have like 10 or 20,000 plays on each track. But then go to those people's Instagrams, and a lot of times you're going to see a lot of activity. So it's much more important that the activity is real than how much of it is. I always tell 10,000 real fans is worth a million people who've heard of you. That's what I always tell people.
Yeah, it can be really deceiving for sure. I heard recently that Spotify, there's these like streaming farms and things like that. And like that produces a lot of like fake streams. And then on Instagram, there's so many people who buy followers and things like that. And I think
Exactly.
it's difficult when you're scrolling. And I have it myself sometimes too, put a lot of effort into this, a lot, a lot of effort and a lot of time. And then when things
Yeah.
don't grow the way that you want, or when you spend hours and hours on a reel or on an episode of a podcast and it doesn't generate as many followers or views that you think, it gets frustrating. What do you say to clients who are getting frustrated by the numbers? How do you keep them motivated and engaged to keep putting out content?
Yeah, that's a great question. Going back again to the fact that I'm blessed that like I don't need this work to survive. I find it, and I've talked about this with my partner, I'm really only interested in taking clients now that are kind of more open-minded about what it takes to build the metrics that they want. So what I've noticed is that the mindset of the client really leads to the success of them getting their numbers. So in that sense is like, being willing to adjust your brand, being willing to adjust the content. The best clients are the ones that are pushing me to do stuff for them. They're like, Bander, I'm going to try this. Like, okay, we did that reel did well. So my team thinks that like now I'm going to do this reel, but I'm going to add music here. Or now I'm going to change this. I'm going to do 2 still photos. Then I'm going to adjust and I'm going to do. Those are the clients that blow up. And it's not an age thing. I got a client who's in his late 50s, and this guy is so much more innovative than some of our clients that are in their 20s. It's like, it really comes down to the mindset. So if you go into it and you've done it your way and you're like, no, I'm going to post this and this is what I like and this is what my brand is, and the numbers are just not coming, or if you think that the reason your numbers aren't up higher is because you just simply haven't had your piece of viral content yet, those are the clients that I usually try not to work with. And it's nothing against them. Some of them are incredibly talented, have a lot going on, but it's really the mindset and being open. And even myself, I've reinvented myself many, many different times. Like if you look through my branding, I've learned I pay attention to what works. Like people need to study their metrics and study the posts. And it's like, okay, so I realized that people like seeing I used to be like, okay, I'm only going to post music and I'm not going to post anything about my business success because I'm a little more private about that. And I don't want people to think that I care about that or I'm conceited. But then I was like, wait a second. But when I post an inspiring quote and I'm looking kind of sad or I'm thinking about something and I'm on my balcony or I'm like in front of my car, people seem to really like that. So I'm like, okay, that inspires people. So utilize it. Use it in terms of pivoting into the other things that I really want to push, like my music or my art. So you also have to let, society dictates what's relevant about you, not what you are going to dictate to society about why you're relevant. Like that's the thing that people need to understand. Your ego is like going to either be the best thing going for you or it's going to be your end in this industry. And like, that's what I think it really comes down to. It's like, you don't decide what's cool about you. The market does. And it's like, if nothing you post gets any response, then it's probably that you're just not cool. Like your stuff isn't resonating. And it's like, I felt that too. Like I'm the first person. Like I did a post once and it was like, in hindsight, I was looking at the lighting. I was like eating sushi and I tried to have this like clever quote. The post didn't do well. And I was talking to my brother. I was like, that was a terrible post. Like it just wasn't a good post. It doesn't mean I have a great brand and I post other things that are great. That post was bad. So I archived it. Like you have to be able to look at yourself like that and be honest. And that's the biggest like message I would say I want to get out to people is like, just be real with yourself. And your stuff will get better and will get better engagement.
Yeah, and I think staying genuine is really important because I think for me,
Totally.
when I've tried in my own personal social media journey, when I've tried to kind of hop on trends or do certain, I love to dance, but I'm not a great dancer. I'm also not someone that's really into like fashion and makeup and all those kind of things. Although I do work with some rave fashion brands, but I found that the reels that do best are like my packing videos and things like that, because that's just who I am. I love to pack. I love to organize. Whereas like ones
Yeah.
where I'm dancing or maybe not, or like doing, fashionable things, because it's not really genuine to who I am. And I think that says a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been around the industry for a long time. I was mentioning earlier before we started that you posted a couple of my tracks and that I was super excited to be doing this interview because I was like, oh my God, like she promoted my stuff when I was just first, breaking out in my EDM. And, that just shows that you have innovated yourself and you have kept yourself relevant. And that's what I think is something really important. It's like people, there are some people who are so young and they're so relevant at like 21. And then by the time they're 25, 26, no one cares about them anymore because it's like not authentic what they're doing. And then you see, I focus on the artists and the craftsmen who relevant their entire lives. The big actors, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, these guys I love, like, Martin Scorsese, directors, people who have like literally no matter how much older they got, not only stayed relevant, but like stayed as the cutting edge that like all new directors look up to and fight to compete with in the box office. Like it's crazy. And so, people need to relax a little bit and not worry about so much about getting older and think about, are you putting out something you love? Like if you trust what you love, I always try to tell people that, like, I try to put out content that I want to watch over and over again. And if, I've been like really supporting some of these young guys that do these beautiful reels of like their city. Like they have drones that go over, this kid, he's got like 50,000 followers and all he does is he posts these beautiful drone shots of like the Northeast, like Pittsburgh and his town and everything. And he followed me and I wrote him back and and he was like, oh man, thanks for following me, dude. I love your stuff. And I was like, you too, man. Like, I love your stuff. We should collab sometime. Like, it's really cool. And he's like, really? Like, you like this stuff? And I was like, yeah, like it's authentic. It's beautiful. It's artistic. And you're not doing something to try to be on a trend. You're just doing what you think is beautiful. And that's why you're getting such good traction on your brand. That's why the kid's got like 40,000 followers and all his reels are like these beautiful factory shots of like Pittsburgh with like smooth music. And it gets like 100,000 views every video. And it's like, because people think it looks cool and they want to watch it over and over again. And so I'm attracted to these young people who are coming up, who are kind of thinking that way and are putting this stuff out and are just like doing what they think is beautiful, not what like they're not creating stuff to try to hit trends. And I think that's the real difference between someone who has a craft that's going to be popular and grow for a long time and the flash in the pan types.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So circling that back to music, what advice do you have today for like up and coming producers when it comes to social media and marketing and branding? I mean, we talked about a lot, but can you talk a little bit specifically about DJs and producers? Because I think most of the audience listening to this podcast is music industry professionals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, a lot of what it comes down to, as far as with DJ producers is what I always, focus on and tell producers, like focus on production first. Make sure that what you're doing is original work. A big thing is that a lot of, and it's hard, and even myself is tempted, when I was coming up as a producer, we had to program everything. It was like drum programming and synth programming and making the sounds and everything. And now, anybody can be a producer because you can take 4 loops from Splice and make a beat and loop it. And now you're a producer. And I think that like what a lot of these young people, but they're not getting the traction with it because people are going to be connected with something that sounds unique and original. And so I think if you really want to separate it as a producer, you really need to also study musicianship. Like you need to like, play an instrument, understand music, like actually know how to compose, and not just be a programmer. So that would be the first thing is like the best producers are the ones who are brilliant programmer mixers combined with composers, and then the other thing is like completing works, every producer I know, including myself, we have that like, top 20 tracks we're working on right now, and they're all so cool and like, but they're all not done. And what my business partner, who's my dearest friend, he has been so good for me in my life because not only is he my partner, but he also is one of my top engineers. And he like knows, he's like, okay, like every month he'd be like, forget your top 20. I want your top 5. Now I want you to email me your top 5 songs. And then from the top 5, he's like, these 3, we're getting done in the next 30 days. I want this next week, we're booking Wednesday in the studio to complete this, the next week this, the next week that. You got to finish your stuff. You don't need 100 great ideas. You need 3 to 5 really tight finished records, finished graphics, mixed and mastered, and a marketing plan for them. So I think that, like, really, if you notice, the producers and the DJs who really shine are the ones who've really completed works and have been consistently marketing those completed works. And that's not easy for everybody. I mean, there are so many talented, a lot of the close friends that I have who also produce, who are my clients, struggle to just put the music out. You got to finish stuff and get it out. And don't worry about perfectionism so much, and just worry about finishing stuff. There's always going to be like one synth you could have like added a little more tails with automation, or like, oh, this thing could have gone up a little bit more, down a little bit more. If you obsess over that too much, like, some of that is cool, but also at a certain point, you got to be like, it's in the range. I always say that to myself. It's in the range, meaning it's in the range of sounding really great. Could I sit down with and work with one of these, great producers to collab on the track, like a Dead Mouse or something? And if I was sitting with Joel in the studio for 6 hours straight, would he maybe help me to would we work on this synth and the wobble might be a little crazier? Yeah, sure. But it sounds dope just right now how I've done it with my automation. So that's another thing. So finishing stuff and getting your projects out is something that I think is really, really important. And then again, like I mentioned earlier in the interview, the last thing I think is the most important is that you got to make sure that the marketing side and the actual investment in yourself is more on that side and less on worrying about having like the fancy music video or the huge studio space. You don't need to spend, tens of thousands of dollars looking for an investment, to have like some fancy studio so that it looks really cool. You just need that, like, you could have a laptop and a high-end sound card and get the same results with a Kyotica eyeball, and that alone will really, really make it happen. And so putting the money and investment that you have, whatever you have, in the right place is something that I think producers really and young artists really need to think about.
There's a lot of good advice there. And this advice can be applied to a lot of different areas, but I think definitely that's good advice for DJs and producers. So I want to talk a little bit about all your amazing accomplishments that led you to where we are today. One being the remix that you did for Katy Perry. That's huge. Can you walk us through the creative process for that? And how did you go about achieving that?
Yeah, thanks. So, a big thing that I did during that period of time when I was interesting is that my original following from electronic music was actually from remixes. And the Katy Perry one, while it didn't actually end up being placed on her actual record, it did make the final 10 of all of those remixes. And so it got promoted on all the big channels on Twitter back when Twitter was like really popping. So it was on like the Universal pages and on the Katy Perry fan pages. I tell people it's not as much that my best remixes that were really successful I was any more like talented at doing or did a better job on than other. It was almost like certain remixes just worked in the best way. Meaning what I mean by that is like that Katy Perry song, California Girls, it was like it fit perfectly with the type of EDM beats that I'm really good at making. So it was like the vocals and the arrangement, because it was just perfectly done and it was perfectly sitting close to the BPM. And because it was like, popular at the time, I think it just felt very easy and natural and flowing to build a remix to it. I've been sent other projects like where the vocals are just like, I love the song, but it's just like, it's so frustrating and hard to kind of come up with the beat around it because it just doesn't sit right. So, I think with the remixes with that one, it's a combination of like knowing how to really finish and make a solid remix in a fast amount of time. That was another element of it. And it's interesting. Sometimes when you have a time pressure, you almost do a better job. Like I only had like 4 days to do that remix.
Wow, that's not a lot of time.
Yeah, I was literally just cranking it out. And part of what worked about that was like I didn't focus on making lots of different instruments because I didn't have time. I didn't have time to like try this and try that and fiddle with 1,000 different like experimental synth plugins. I went right with my bread and butter. With the bass plugin I know, the synth plugin I use all the time. Like I didn't try to go outside of my wheelhouse. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on a solid hard kick, a dope bass line, and smooth pad, and that's it. And so it ended up coming out really good because I think I didn't put any fluff into it. I just banged it out, and it ended up coming together in a tight way. So with remixes, it's like, I have so much respect for these guys who just do all these big complex remixes, because remixing is really, really, really hard. Remixing is like harder almost than making original pieces of work, because you have to adapt your production to another producer and vocal arranger. So it forces you to also, it's like I'm a big fan of chess. I don't know if you like to play chess at all, but chess, remixing in a way like reminds me of chess in the fact that like you can be a great chess player, but if you're not used to the style of the opponent that they're playing, you're gonna lose. They're gonna smoke you because like they're coming at you and they have a different strategy and way of handling it. And that's the same thing with remixes. It's like if you don't know how to get into the mindset of another producer, you're really never gonna be a good remixer. Because you're never gonna be able to adapt to like a different tempo count. Be like, oh wow, this is 5/8. I always work in 4/4. This is a 132 BPMs. Like all my tracks are 125. So yeah, so I think that I hope that explains a little bit. But basically, it's like it's about I was able to adapt well in that situation. And then if you were to go through my library, I have a whole bunch of other remixes that I attempted to do. Like I have a remix I did of Seal and stuff, and really cool music, but I just never put it out because it just didn't work. Like at the end of the day, it just didn't sit the way that some of my more successful remixes have sit in the track.
Wow, I didn't know that actually. Like, I think a lot of people would think that doing a remix would be easier than coming up with something on your own. I see a lot in hard dance. There's so many remixes. Like, there's hard style remixes of everything, right? And they seem to be pumped out left and right every day, and you don't think much about it. But yeah, based on what you're saying, I mean, I never heard that before. So I think that's really interesting. You have to put your mind in the place of the producer of the original track, and you to stay true to the original track while at the same time staying true to yourself and putting your own original spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, and that might be, again, I can only speak for myself, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm a composer. So making the original stuff is easy for me because that's all I know how to do is come and make a melody up and create something. If you're not a composer producer, remixing might actually be easier because now you've got a structure and you don't have to figure out the melody because you have the vocals. So you just like kind of mimic what the vocals are. But for me, because I'm always used to creating the original content all on my own and then making my own vocals to fit my content, remixing can be incredibly challenging because I'm not in charge. The original producer's in charge. I'm adapting a work to their work. And so I think that that's, again, it really has to do with your own individual background as a producer.
So what do you think about when people make remixes of your tracks? Do you feel like you have a critical ear for that, or are you really supportive of that? Or like, what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, it's cool. I've only had a couple remixes done on my tracks. That's actually something that I want to do more this year when I drop some of my EDM stuff. I normally my process in the past would be like I would remix it myself and I'd bring a co-producer in to kind of who I know is kind of good at that particular style. But the times I've heard it done on some of my vocals, I've actually been really like impressed with it. And I've also I've also found that like, I've been very humbled sometimes. Like some of my, one of the original projects that I was involved with which got my name out there and got me signed was I did a remix for Flatfoot, which is a song by Martin Clancy, who's Sinead O'Connor's producer. And it was something that broke me out into the mainstream industry. Like the track got on Billboard and all this stuff. And my remix did really well, but honestly, I heard like other remixes on there that I thought were even better. And that like, had more complex things going on. And people were like, I kind of had like the very good, clean, minimalist remix of the track. And, so what I would say is that it was less me learning from other people remixing my stuff, but for me being on remix teams and hearing my remix compared to like some of these other guys, you know, like especially the older producers. Like when I was in my early 20s and I was doing remixes and I got to hear these other mixes made by these guys who were like, all they do is do remixes of EDM stuff, and being humbled and being like, wow, like, you know, it's a different craft. Like being a producer, being a remixer is its own thing. And, you know, there are some people who are just so good at doing remixes, like, because you also have to be good at song structure and at time counting and doing these other things that are almost kind of like the harder work than just coming up with cool melodic ideas. Remixing really forces you to kind of like clean up the kitchen, if that makes sense, you know? Like you got to clean up at the end. And that's something that's like really, really difficult. So that would be what I would say is like the most humbling thing about, you know, working alongside other remixers, you know?
Cool. So what do you think about now the current trend on like TikTok and social media with all these remixes? Maybe it's my algorithm because I keep listening to them, but like there's just these guys that just pop every day. There's like 9 different remixes of a song, but they're really short. Like it's not even the full track. It's just like short remixes of songs, like just on TikTok, or maybe I just can't find the full song. But what do you think about that trend?
No, I think I think it's where things are going. I mean, you know, I noticed that as well. I find that one thing I like about these reels, as someone who's also trying to produce my own reel content, is that's a great way to discover new music. I mean, I have found like if you look at the new stuff I'm bumping, a lot of hip hop tracks, a lot of electronica music. It's stuff that I discovered from someone's reel where they did a remix of it, and then I'll even sometimes have to search in the comments for like someone being like song name, and then like somebody will be like, this is the song. And like, so, you know, I think that, you know, it's young people understanding that that's what it is now, because because of the way that content is being shared now, which is a scrolling reel style thing, that it honestly, it's almost like those days where you'd have like a minute intro and then a 3-minute body of the track and then a 3-minute outro. I mean, those days are like inside of the electronic world. That's still cool and people appreciate that, but that's not really how content is shared anymore. And in fact, that's really what it is now. And I try to do that with with my own stuff, and realizing that now you have to be more than just a remixer or a producer. You have to be like a filmmaker, a photographer, a screenwriter. Like you have to be all these things now. Your brand is bigger now. People are less interested in like, who's this guy's new music? And like more like, let me see this person's Instagram. Like, let me see their content as a whole. And I think that's what's changing. And a lot of these young people are starting to kind of figure that out, that like, it's like you got to make music, but then you also got to, it's like, how does your music incorporate into a cool brand? And that's what's changing the most. And I try to really talk to that with my clients, because like a whole lot of people that follow me and support my stuff on Instagram, they don't even know that some of them like didn't even know that I had music out, like on Spotify. Like it's the most insane thing. They're like, I love your reels. I love the music in your reels. And I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. Like, have you peeped my tracks, like my actual songs that are out? And they're like, no. And then I'll shoot them a link. They're like, what? This is cool. You have music out. It's just because I don't think it's almost like your Instagram is now the landing page where people stay. And that's why these young people are making content like that, because they realize it. People aren't like enjoying your reel and then they're like bouncing to Spotify or bouncing to your other platforms. That's just happening slowly, less and less and less and less. And so you have to kind of get with it and kind of realize that, instead of fighting it and being like, okay, I get it. So it's important to put music out, but more, it's like now, instead of, I was always focused on like my next EP, my next single, getting it to chart, getting it on the big playlist. And it's like, that stuff's important, but it has to be balanced and equated with short reels, like what you're saying, the quick remixes, the everyday content, the lifestyle stuff, the inspirational posts. People want to see all that. You have to be a comprehensive brand now. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, you got to wear a lot of hats. There's a lot of hats to wear.
It's exhausting. It makes you want to take a nap after.
Yeah, I'm tired. That's a lot. So I want to add one more layer on top of this. Yeah, sure. And that's something we haven't got to yet, which I really want to hit on, is your financial career. what tips do you have for artists or people who are just starting a brand when it comes to financial management? Because you did mention,
Sure.
investing in yourself, putting money into different things, but how do you make smart financial decisions while still having fun, staying true to your brand, enjoying life? How do you do that?
It's hard. Look, I mean, I'm not going to deny it. It's very, very hard. The economy is getting more difficult. I was very lucky. I'm a little bit older now, but I was very lucky that in the early stages when I started making money, I was very frugal with it and I reinvested it and I saved it. I mean, that's the most important thing. The first and foremost thing that I teach young people who are starting to make money or figuring it out is you have nothing to prove to anybody else. The only thing that you should be that you should want to do with your money is be able to enjoy looking at your accounts going up and seeing that your investments are doing well. You don't need to prove to other people with things with cars or clothes or lifestyle. So, the main mistake that people make as their money income increases, they try to match it with their spending, and in many places they exceed it. So if they're making, $5,000 a month, they live a $7,000 a month lifestyle. When they start making 10, they try to show off a 12 to 20,000 a month lifestyle with 10 coming in. And that's the huge mistake. If your spending only goes up by about 20 to 30% of your earned income, you're always going to have money. It's like a simple math. It's like, calorie deficit, so it's like, if you are always saving more than you're spending, or at least making sure that your savings rate is at a strong level, you'll always be in a good position. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is like, you have to be able to provide a service and a skill set. People want to just be paid for their art. And unfortunately, we don't really live in that world as much anymore. Like you have to look at it as more as like your art is almost a loss leader. In the sense of it's like you give your art away to monetize your brand. And that's something that a lot of young musicians don't understand. So they're focusing on making music, but you really need to focus on services, meaning like, what is it that you offer to other people that is monetizable? Part of my success is that I have a range of service skills. So I've invested in real estate. That's not as much service, but I understand how to put my money to work and to do something with it. I've learned how to do marketing. I know how to engineer. I can make productions and vocal stuff for other artists and clients. So there's a lot of different things that I can do. I'm a consultant. I'm a business investor consultant. So I focus on providing value to other people. And I think that's something that young people really need to focus on is like, you're a great beat programmer. Awesome. Figure out a way to monetize your services for other big producers. Let's say you're a really great producer at making tempo changes okay, dope. Like I would like, especially like when I get a big remix project, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't necessarily want to do with my remixing, like that I don't need to. I'd rather focus on programming. So I would pay a younger producer to I'd be like, hey, could you get these vocals to like 128 for me? And then and I'll just pay you for that. And then I'll focus on making the track and the remix. So the young people that I know who are doing well in the industry, they know how to monetize their service, and then, so that they can always earn money, so that's something that's really, really important. And then when it comes to, investing in your brand, it is something that's important to do. It's the tough reality. But if you don't put money into your stuff, it's really not going to go anywhere. People look at these people who are just posting videos and getting tons of views, and they're like, wow, like how they do it. Like, to be honest, if you deep dive, a lot of these girls, these young, beautiful girls that have like insane views on TikTok, most of them, if you notice, have come from some money. They're like, someone invested in them. They had TikTok ads. They did something to get the ball rolling, to make their stuff get more viral. You don't see like them on very inexpensive phones in like crummy little apartments, and they have like, bless you, and they have like 1 million something views. So, it's kind of like, and there's no shame in like, if you have to work a regular job or you have to do something to get the bills paid so that you can invest in build this brand so you can start a side business, that's even better too. So it's about building your value. and really really just focusing on that, and making yourself something that you can always monetize with beyond the music, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I think that's difficult to do and takes time, but like I think that's great advice. And we're coming to the end now, but I just have two more
Sure.
questions for you. But this flew by and it was a great conversation.
This was
So
so fun. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. So this is the question that I ask all of my guests on the podcast. How do you rave for a cause? How do you party for a purpose in your life?
Nice. Well, raising for a cause, I would say, is my main thing. Is my cause is twofold. One, I raised to help my family. So, I believe in taking care of my friends and a family, creating jobs. So, I'm a big believer, of course, there's many things around the world that I care about, but I'm personally less of a fan of like saying giving to charities, as much as I would rather help five friends be able to make something of their life, and make money for themselves so that they can take care of their families. So like with my own family, I take care of my mom financially. I look out for my friends. I try to get them all jobs, and I try to get them all work. So like my cause is like raising people out of poverty, raising people out of financial dependence, and helping them grow to independence. That's something that I can do. And I get much more satisfaction from that than, say, just giving my money away to a charity that may or may not even help the people that you're hoping that you help them with, And so, I guess parting with a purpose would simply be, though I don't do a whole lot of partying these days, but I would say that, like, my purpose is outside of what I just mentioned before, helping people, is inspiring people and making them feel like they're connected to something, so I try to post, like, in my captions, for example, things that are real, like things that I've dealt with in my life, like here in LA, betrayal, people pretending to be your friend when they're not, people, and being loyal, and the value of being honest, and like what that actually means, and how that's so hard to find in this new generation and in this new time. And so I guess my purpose is to bring those old school values to the new school, and teach that, like, who you are and your character is everything. You're broke if you don't have good character. You can have all the money in the world, all the nice cars and places to live, but if you're a shady person, it's just all worthless. No, and so I guess that would be my purpose, is values.
That's amazing. I love that. Me too.
Yeah.
That's so much more important than just on the surface things. And it's
Yeah.
it's hard today too with social media because that's what you see is on the surface. But then when you really get to know somebody, their true colors come out.
Yeah, unfortunately it's true.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, final question, where can people connect with you online?
Of course, appreciate that. So yeah, so I love people reaching out. My main hub is obviously my Instagram, which is DJ Bander, DJBANDER, and you can shoot me a DM. And I love to support new people and find out how I can help your brand, what your music, your craft, what you're working on, and see if there's something that I can help you build with. People can also check out my agency website, banderproductions.com. And reach out to me on any of those platforms. I have a website, djbander.com, as well, where you can check out what my latest releases are and what I'm doing. But yeah, definitely hit me up on Instagram, and would love to reach out there, hear from everybody who wants to reach out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for today. This was great. I'll have to have you on again because I have more questions and things, but
Would
thank
love
you.
to anytime.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Bye.
Amy. You rock.
So that was my episode with DJ Bander. So fun facts, some behind the scenes information. This is the third time I'm recording this outro. The first time, I think I just like stumbled a lot. The second time I realized my webcam was not plugged into my computer. It was plugged into my extension cord over here where I have a tangle of cables. So here's the third time. The video quality looks a lot better. But yeah, guys, just once again, so much work goes into this podcast, so much behind the scenes stuff, but third time's the charm. I think this time I'll get it right. So here we go. That was my episode with DJ Bander. I don't know about you guys, but it was so cool having him on the podcast. He's a wealth of knowledge. He just knows so much about so many different areas. I actually had a couple of off the record chats with him too. And he taught me so much. I'm like, oh my God, I love to connect with people like that And that's one of the best things about this podcast is it's an amazing way to meet people from all over the world that maybe I wouldn't have met before. It's a great way to connect. It's the best form of networking. So it was really cool to have him. And yeah, hopefully you guys will be seeing him around. We're working on some things together. So that's great. So now before we sign out, a couple of announcements and messages from our sponsors. So first things first, the Drop Bass Not Bombs podcast has recently partnered with the Ravewear store to bring you bomber jackets, caps, bucket hats, flags, fans, hoodies, t-shirts, and more. A portion of the proceeds from the merchandise will go to a local animal shelter here in The Hague. So go on over to rave-wear.nl. Check out the newest collection, including the contest winner. So as you guys know, we had a digital design contest. So his design is going to be on the back of some of the shirts. So definitely go and check that out too. I'm so excited for this new collection of merch. Really excited for this partnership. Also, very soon we'll be getting fans just in time for festival season. So great way to cool off, show your Drop Bass Not Bomb support with one of our fans. Next, I don't know about you guys, but I always wear earplugs at raves, festivals, concerts, no exceptions. Eargasm earplugs makes high fidelity earplugs that keep your ears safe at your next rave or festival. The earplugs are comfortable, affordable, and unique to fit in your every need. Use code MCUnicorn10 to check out. Use code MCUnicorn10 at checkout. Save some money today and save your ears as well. Hearing is really important. Next up, you guys know by now that this episode is brought to you by one of our partners, Shroom Beach. Shroom Beach is a rave and festival, psychedelic rave and beachwear brand with reflective, trippy, and fun fits. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see some of the outfits. You can use my code MCUnicorn20 and shop from amazing psychedelic swimwear and festival outfits at shroombeach.com. And best of all, a portion of the proceeds from every purchase goes to support psychedelic research. So head on over to shroombeach.com or click the link down in the description below to learn more. So what's next up on my agenda in the coming weeks? Well, a million things as always. I'll be heading to Las Vegas very soon for EDC Vegas. I'm so excited. It'll be my first time at the festival and also my first time in Vegas. I got huge plans over there, so stay up to date by checking out my social media at MCUnicornOfficial, and I'll have more updates for you guys as the weeks get closer. I'm so excited. As always, I've been putting out a lot of content, a lot of articles on EDM House Network, and most recently on Festigia. So Festigia, it's a new company that I've partnered with. I have this really awesome 101 camping guide. So you guys know I don't camp anymore, but when I did camp, I was the expert. I still am the expert, I think, when it comes to what to bring to a camping festival. But that's probably the blog that I'm the most proud of so far on there. It's a comprehensive guide. I got a packing list for you. If you're not the planner of your friend group, if you're not the rave mom or dad, send it to the rave mom or dad. Get ready for festival season. Check out that guide. Once again, I'll put all the links down below in the show notes, in the show description, so you guys can check out some of my articles. Also, as always, I have a lot of interviews, editorials, event reviews, etc., etc. Lastly, if that wasn't enough, please check out my second podcast, Ravers Revelations, with my friend Elena Van Wyk. This is the podcast where we read and react to your crazy festival stories. The podcast is available on her YouTube channel, and it's also on the Ravers Revelations Spotify. If you're looking for bonus content where the crazy stuff goes down, head on over to patreon.com/Ravers Revelations. If you'd like to support me in the podcast, please give me a follow on Instagram. Once again, that's at MCUnicornOfficial. Please also follow us, Drop Bass Not Bombs NL. And if you like the podcast, as always, leave us a 5-star review. Drop a comment. Let us know what you thought. Maybe who do you want us to hear from next? Just all the things. Hit me up, slide in my DMs, drop a comment. You guys know where to reach me. If you're watching on YouTube, please click like and subscribe. Thumbs up. And we'll see you on Friday, April 19th for the next episode. Bye.